For me, the most important question today is how to sit together and to discuss. Not a one, two person to see what's supposed to all us on this planet. Start to raise the questions about what's important.
Are you bending the truth of climate change?
And why are African states less developed than Western states?
And what I'd like to
What
know
is the proper balance between Jewish values and other values in a democracy?
I have a few questions. Why do they dislike Americans?
My biggest question.
How does an individual relate to the group in the 21st century?
This place has a lot of history. And this place is, used to burn books of people who speak things other people don't like to know. And maybe that's why we come here to August Bebelplatz in the middle of Berlin, where books got burned, their thoughts got burned, their freedom of speech got burned here.
It's wonderful to see all the beautiful faces around this table. We have a long day ahead of us, so we're going to go right into the program. Today, we ask and we begin to discover answers to 100 questions chosen from thousands donated by people from all around the world.
We will ask them all over the course of the next 9 hours.
Okay, so turn the camera a bit straight rather than that way. Please, thank you. Not so much, a little bit there, thank you. Okay.
Together we come together as one to celebrate our diversity and to gather a multiplicity of viewpoints.
Thank you for being here with us.
At the table of free voices.
Question 1.
From Anonymous, USA.
What is today's most important unreported story?
You can start with your answer.
What ought to be reported today, and definitely does now, is how much life costs, the price of life on this planet.
We are going from crisis to crisis, and we only report a portion of the story. When the guns of battle are silenced, we then forget about that country, that region that has suffered conflict, and we go to report a different story. And when we do so, we
Also
only
ich würde mit Darfur beginnen. Die Ausrottung von Bevölkerungen, nur weil sie eine andere Religion haben oder eine andere Rasse haben und die Welt kaum interessieren, weil sie keine Ressourcen haben, kein Erdöl.
The most unreported story of today is the truth behind the global terrorism. We have no idea, really no idea, what is the truth behind it. Who is alive, who is dead, who is advancing it, who is pioneering it, who is making use of it in his or their favor.
There are children who has been slaved, human, trafficked.
The millions and millions of people crossing borders illegally in search for a better life.
I think today's most important unreported story is the story of the young girl who died 10 minutes ago of malaria. She died needlessly because the drugs to be able to kill the malaria parasite exist and are cheap. But she didn't get those drugs. And she died, and just now another child died. And this story goes unreported.
I don't think there is today's one most important unreported story. There are many unreported stories throughout the world.
Is the good things that are happening in the world. We don't hear about the good things that are happening. There are such wonderful things happening out there. All we ever hear about is the bad news, the death, the destruction, wars, killing, murders, rapes.
Problemas. Os jornais, se você torce, pode dar a impressão que se tem que pode sair sangue.
Thank you. Question 12 from Judy Tweed, 24 Denver, USA.
Should we have the right to choose where we live?
Now that's an interesting question.
I like it.
A gente nasce, né? A gente nasce num ponto do planeta Terra. E se a gente não quer ficar ali, vai para outro lugar. Mas também, quando a gente vai para outro lugar, a gente é discriminado.
Llegué hace 2 días y ya tengo que irme el 11 porque solo me dieron una visa de 4 días. Como colombiano, como ciudadano del mundo, no se me permite entrar a este paraíso, al paraíso del primer mundo, sino 4 días.
Well, I believe, of course, we should have the right to choose where we live. I mean, we live in a world where capital can move, where goods can move, and I don't understand why there is so much hysteria about people moving.
For example, one time I wanted to go to Dubai, but because I have a 1951 Geneva Convention passport, I was not allowed. And the reason for this, I asked, they told me that because I didn't belong anywhere.
Everybody wishes to live in a place that is free of war. Everybody wishes to live a harmonious existence, but some people can buy that. and others cannot. Some people can lay claim to that right and others are just not in a position to do so. Yes, all of us have the right or should have the right to live wherever we want, but all of us should be able to afford to do so.
Sometimes you have to move to be able to support your family. Now, if you're crossing borders and you are not recognized by their state, does that mean you're illegal? By definition of the state, but I don't think that as humans we can really say another human is illegal.
And the people who are moving are mostly doing so because they are desperate. They're taking enormous risks. Look at the people who are arriving in the Canary Islands every week in makeshift boats, and they're arriving on the beach by the hundreds. And these people are absolutely desperate. Otherwise, they would not have left. That's not a fair choice. That's not saying I'm going to choose where I'm going to live. You're not going to choose to risk 9 chances out of 10 of drowning or being killed before you actually arrive. That's not a choice.
You could also ask the question, shouldn't we have the right to remain where we are? This is a very urgent question for many, many people on this earth.
Like Tibetan people and myself as a Tibetan, and we don't have this right. Yes, we can live in our country, but not necessarily we can do what we want to.
Le jour où le droit atteindrait effectivement la possibilité de donner ce droit sans restriction à tous les hommes, ce jour-là, l'humanité aura franchi plus qu'une limite. Elle aura atteint un degré d'évolution tout à fait désirable par toutes les cultures et par toutes les nations.
It's important we can live where we want to. And everyone, I think it's important their nets. Even the birds need their net. The human beings need their homes.
Question 19, from Claire McIntosh, 25, Brisbane, Australia.
What are the basic dignities that each human being deserves, and why do we let so many people go without them?
Basic dignity is human dignity, their pride, so they can have their head up, not head down. They don't have to be scared of anything. They're also, maybe they are living in a remote village in some part of developing countries. So what? They should be standing straight.
We let so many people go without them, so we can let other people do what they do. Take lands, drop bombs, take water, control minds.
All for ourselves and nothing for other people seems to have been in every age of the world the vile maxim of the masters of mankind. All for ourselves, nothing for other people. It's Adam Smith who said that. Adam Smith, the father of capitalism. He knew that that was the tendency, all for ourselves and nothing for other people.
I think that the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is what should be available for people throughout the world. We should not accept that anyone is denied those basic human rights. The basic human right to live a decent life, to have access to food, shelter, and education. It is unacceptable that in today's world there are children who are dying of hunger. It is unacceptable that in today's world there are children who have no shelter. It is unacceptable in today's world.
To prepare myself for this question, I went into the internet, Wikipedia, and I reread the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and it made me cry. I just wept. It is so beautiful. Let's put it in every passport.
My father was exterminated at the age of 37. My mother at the same age. My sisters were exterminated at the age of 12 and 16. I survived, and life has become very precious for me, and I assume that it is also precious for every human being on this planet, and yet it is often taken away for wrong reasons.
We teach our children that our lives are worth more than other people's lives, outsiders, people with a different color skin than ours, people that have less than we do, people that don't speak the language that we do, people, the other people.
What happens oftentimes is that those people are really seen as them and not us, and there's not much attention paid to or much concern for the basic rights and dignities of those people.
But I think you have to think about what we means in this question. Who are we and who are they?
The baby, when they cry, you cannot distinguish if it's a boy, a girl, what nationality, what religion is the religion of the mother. It's only one voice. Don't forget this. It's only one sound. We must remember.
As if people really saw each other as their brother and really could imagine that each person out there was their child or their relative, it would be really different. Like if we could really open our hearts that wide.
Ljudsko dostojanstvo mora da zadobije svako za sebe. Prethodno se mora odreći svake vrste samotlačenja politikom, ideologijom, religijom, nacionalističkom uskogrudošću.
Eu venho da selva, onde passei a maior parte da minha vida, com tribos, onde a questão da liberdade é bem maior do que a liberdade que temos aqui. Não conheci seres mais livres do que eles, do que os povos indígenas. Não conheci.
Ich weiß es ab dem Moment, wo hier zum ersten Mal dieses Gemurmel angefangen hat und dieses Stimmengewirr, da habe ich jetzt mal richtig den Rücken runtergeredet, da habe ich gemerkt, das bringt was, das hilft was. Ich war ein bisschen erinnert an im Himmel über Berlin, da habe ich ja auch gibt es ja die Engel, die all diese Stimmen hören. Und da gibt es auch so ein ähnliches Gemurmel die ganze Zeit. Und plötzlich gab es hier dieses Gemurmel, nur das war echt. Das waren wirklich Leute, die alle gedacht und laut gedacht haben.
Oh, hey, did you see Bianca? I think she's over there. There she is. I think she showed up late.
If you can do me a big favor, don't move it when I'm talking, because that immediately, if you can do it before or after or when I stop talking, because if you do it when I do, then my concentration, which is very hard to have any.
Do it when I get the notes from the other.
Sure. Wrong.
Question 28 from Andrew, 22, Frankfurt, Germany.
What if all Chinese people want a car? Please begin.
It's why not? Everybody needs a car. Why to talk only about Chinese? And when you go to America, they have everybody family has more than 3 cars.
Oh, no, by Chinese, everybody wants a car. Everybody. I mean, there are a lot of Italian, French, and German people don't have a car and they want a car.
What if all Indians want a car? What if all Africans want a car?
Wenn alle Chinesen ein Auto haben wollen und dann noch dazu mit dem Ehrgeiz, möglichst starke, möglichst große, möglichst schnelle Autos zu fahren, dann wird sich der Himmel über der Welt verdunkeln.
Not enough roads, many accidents, not enough car parking space, too much pollution.
如果中国人都要想买汽车的话，那将发生什么？那把德国人全部变成汽车工人，为中国人生产汽车，最后把德国人全部累倒，这是不可能发生的事情。
The car of today in the wealthy world utilizes 2 to 3% of the energy in the gas tank to actually move the driver. The rest is lost in moving the weight of the frame and the weight of the engine, lost in heat and friction. We've devised an enormously sophisticated set of very badly designed vehicles just to move one person from one place to another.
Petroleum prices will continue their sharp upward movement. Economic chaos in the West at the most, or at the very least, the grim, inevitable realization that something has to be done about the excess consumption of these fossil fuels in the United States of America and other Western countries is going to be impressed on people's consciousness.
China, for a long time, was a nation of bicycles.
I'm encouraged that Chinese automakers are looking at the ecological impacts of the cars and working very hard on thinking about electric cars.
China has a huge opportunity and a huge responsibility to industrialize in a way that works for its people and for its environment and for the world.
It's clear that what's behind the question is not so much the Chinese people, but a metaphor for a situation in which it's unsustainable, clearly.
So we cannot ask of them what we're not prepared to do ourselves. And what we need to do is that we should learn from our mistakes, from the way we have lived, from the irrational and the irresponsible way in which we have lived our life.
问题不在于是有多少人想买新的汽车，问题在于呢人的这种欲望的大门吧被无限的打开了，那么这个无限的这种占有的欲望被打开了之后，我们用什么办法再把这个门关起来呢？
Tudo bem. Tudo bem.
How you doing?
Good. A little bit exhausted.
Yeah.
Hey, wow.
It's too much.
Oh, yeah.
This is just so cool to be here doing this.
Is it?
Yeah, I mean, this is where the Nazis burned the books. Oh, now I get it. Those stack of books are there because of that. Jesus, I didn't realize it.
Really?
Hey.
How many questions do you have now? After all, after so many questions.
Eu estou falando tanto, eu estou falando tanto sobre os problemas, estou mandando brasa.
Am I doing okay?
Question 33 is from the New York-based novelist Siri Husfeldt, who asks,
I'm very curious to know,
to find out how consumer culture actually influences, the personalities, the ways people live, the way they think inside themselves in a given culture. How it becomes part of us and what it means to be able to resist that visual and verbal culture.
It seems to me is always reducing and simplifying reality into something that can be easily bought and sold.
I think
consumer culture, it functions to keep creating a desire in the society, in the community, that here is something new, here is something better, here is something
the people, the man need nothing. He need only himself. He need a love.
Der nok kaffekander i verden. Der nok af alle de her dimser, der omgiver os. Der nok stole, brug en af de mange hundrede, der Og så bruge energien på at udvikle ting, der virkelig vigtigt i det andet, i den overskydende energi, du har.
Y todo esto forma parte de una cultura de la prostitución. Se han prostituido los valores y el hombre es una gran máquina de prostitución también.
We created monsters of agricultural development. McDonald's cows are killed, and there's no ceremony of killing the animal. There's no honoring, thanking that animal for providing the food for us. So when there's no ceremony, the food we eat becomes bad. And guess what? Where McDonald's is eaten, people become sick. What did you expect? There's no ceremony.
The most powerful people on the face of the planet are the ones who can affect the most minds, who can be able to influence human behavior and social movement and the way in which societies view themselves, see themselves, the way they walk, the way they talk, things they eat, they drink and such like. And it's all a matter of economics.
Es un modelo que nos está destruyendo. Es un modelo que nos está consumiendo.
What we really need to look at is the free market itself and see how we can really bring in the whole aspect of ethics.
Wealth in order to share, to care, and to live happily with oneself and others. And the deepest, the best wealth is how to serve others.
Question 37 is from Tom Henze, 30, Berlin, Germany.
Does our wealth depend on the third world being poor?
Die Bezeichnung dritte Welt ist schon ein arroganter Anspruch. Es ist keine dritte Welt, sondern es ist auch eine Welt, die etwas anders entwickelt ist oder etwas in Entwicklung zurücksteht. Aber sie ist nicht die dritte Welt. Wer soll denn die erste Welt sein?
What is that definition of the third world anyway? Is there a first world, a second world, and a third world? Not really. One world, not doing so well, humans fucking it up.
I mean, if our wealth depends on the third world being poor, then we're in trouble. We're in trouble.
Começaram primeiro tirando o ouro. O ouro que para povos indígenas não tinha valor como tem para o capitalista.
Africa has been the cradle of mankind, and I stand very clearly and say that Africa is also going to be the deathbed of capitalism.
África espolhada, África terrível, África. É impossível falar da África sem sentir um certo aperto no coração.
Those who are well fed never understand what it feels like to be hungry.
A Nigerian chief once said, "If you will not share your wealth with us, we will share our poverty with you." So if we want global peace, we have to talk about equitable distribution.
نحتاج أيضا إلى أن نفهم بأن كل الموارد هي مشتركة بين الجميع، وهي لمن يحتاجها أولا. الملكية الحقيقية هي ملكية الاحتياج، تتم عبر الاحتياج. حينما أحتاج كأسا من الماء فهو لي بقوة الحاجة وبقوة الاحتياج.
Fair is not a word that you really hear in economics too much.
There is a connection that we have to make as to the poverty of the people, the wealth of the land, and be observant as to where this wealth is going.
What I believe globalization is really about is about forming global family, moving out of what I call a juvenile species mode of hostile competition and into a more mature mode of cooperation. This has happened to many species all through evolution, and it's our turn now as humans to do this.
I make it very simple. One is joining in the generosity of the divine, which is a power of giving. All life is given to us, and those who do that are forgiving. And then if your life is centered around getting, then you're joining in the culture of forgetting. So the choice is to be part of forgetting and be forgotten, or part of forgiving and being forgiven.
I like that. That's great. He said it for me, my neighbor. Yes, can you come and sit on my seat and say it for me?
I would like it if we had more interaction in this process. I'm enlivened by sharing with somebody. My brain doesn't. I mean, this talking to you talking to you.
How are you? Are you having fun, baby? Huh? Are you having fun?
Yeah.
Because you're so smart. You're such a genius. Answers just roll off your tongue.
I know. I guess we are part of a big experiment. It's not about the questions. This is about us. They're doing something to us here.
Thank you. While you were giving your answers to that last question, I was walking through the circle and I was able to see all your faces, hear your voices, see your expressions. And it was deeply moving for me to see everything that I saw as I walked through the circle. we're such a diverse group that we have here. We're our own United Nations. I saw people from Africa, from Asia, Australia, from, Europe, Americas. And it's beautiful that we're all together here investing in the future. Question 41 from Adrian Messeros, 30, Budapest, Hungary.
Is there a modern version of colonialism?
Yes. Yes, there is a modern version of colonialism, and it's got a name. It's called debt. It is called debt, followed by the structural adjustment policies imposed by the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund.
A lot of this money coming to developing countries is actually used to control the sovereignty of our own government, of our own people.
The bank and the fund move in and they say, okay, if you are going to pay back your debt, and you must pay back your debt, then you have to put interest rates way, way up. That makes it harder for businesses to borrow and to employ people. You've got to privatize everything in sight, so that gives big opportunities to foreign companies and local elites to buy up all of the previously public companies.
The United States of America was itself built on the decimation of entire people. Europe has been built on sucking out the Congo, on sucking out the golden diamond of South Africa.
Primero fue el esclavismo y las materias primas. Hoy sigue siendo el petróleo, hoy sigue siendo el diamante, hoy sigue siendo todos los minerales y materias primas.
Los países latinoamericanos siguen sufriendo la explotación de sus recursos.
All of these policies have been very beneficial to a tiny minority of the people in these countries.
Так называемые вампиры. Это вампиры. Они используют чужую энергию, чужую силу, чужую жизнь для собственного благосостояния, чтобы проживать в экономическом довольстве.
It's modern economic colonialism based on globalization, but its structure is almost exactly the same as it has been for 400 or 500 years.
It's better than colonialism because it doesn't need an army, it doesn't need an administration, it doesn't cost you anything as the person intervening, the state, the powers intervening.
Wir sind Kinder einer Ära, die genug für alle hat. Doch so viele haben Hunger und so wenige sind satt. Einer presst die anderen Zahlen, das war bisher immer gleich. Weil die armen Länder arm sind, sind die Reichen reich.
And this is a really ideal system because it isn't even very, very visible. Colonialism is visible. People think this is rotten, there's pictures taken. But debt is invisible and it works just as well, even more efficiently.
I don't like to be sitting here as an American talking about this, but this is the underbelly of the real world that we live in. It's very real. It has caused enormous misery, and we have to know what's going on in our world in order to change it.
There must be some democratic forms of life and forms of organization that can sidestep all imperial and colonial forms of subjugation. That's the great question of the 21st century.
Question 45 from Katerina, 24, Germany.
Why do we still believe more in nationality than in humanity?
It is by the conditioning of mind that we are trained all the time, that you are part of national identity. That is how we see it. And within a nation, again, it gets down to smaller and smaller and smaller identities.
And so we are fearful. We have been put into a framework to protect ourselves. We are so insecure. We do not know who is for us and who is not for us. And that has destroyed the humanity.
أعطيك مثلا في العراق الآن أصبح في بلدي أنا من العراق أصبح أكثر البشر يلتصقون بأبناء عمومتهم أو بأبناء أخواتهم أو بأبناء المدينة الواحدة. سابقا لم يكن نسأل من هو، من أين أتى هذا الشخص، من أي مدينة، من أي قبيلة، من أي عائلة، نصادقه ونذهب.
It is security, psychological security, that enables people to feel an expanded sense of self, that enables them to respect difference. It is when people feel frightened, scared, cut off, that intolerance grows. And in the nation states today, people are being manipulated through the mass media to learn to hate the other whom they have never met.
We live in a world where we have been conditioned to be tribal, to be nativist, to be nationalist. Of course, it's important to understand that nationalism is really fanaticism.
Moi, je pense qu'en chacun de nous, il y a un dictateur raciste. Je suis persuadé de ça.
Weil uns die Familie näher ist als die Sippe. Die Sippe näher ist als der Stamm. Der Stamm näher ist als das Volk. Das Volk näher ist als die Menschheit.
I, for one, don't believe in nationality at all, and I think more and more of us in the 21st century, children of the world of possibility, children of the future tense, perhaps, live in the passageways between nations, between cultures and between categories, outside the traditional definitions, and our affiliations are not to nations or to the traditional order, but to something beyond that.
I believe that to a certain extent, the concept of nationality is beginning to erode as we turn into a kind of genuinely transnational people.
Sometimes the worst enemy is our own perception.
Thank you. South Africa.
How do we stop our governments from going to war?
I come from the land where has never been any war. So I do not know anything about war, but I do know the suffering you people have experienced. Me, I come from a land of peace, where nothing but peace has been in existence, where no one is fearing being shot, where no one is aiming at you, where no one fights for the land.
We go to war, you, me, us. Governments don't go to war. Governments send us to war. We pay the price. And the price that we pay is not only physical. The price that we pay is psychic. we lose our moral groundedness. We lose ourselves.
It's really a shame. The big powers should be ashamed of what they are doing with the civilization, killing them.
I'm a survivor of war in Bosnia, and for 3.5 years of my childhood, millions of bombs exploded in my city. And to hear a bomb explode is an experience that can't be explained or described, because you feel it in your body. I remember just my whole body reacting to such loudness and to destruction, and my heart would jump every time, millions of times, and there were times when it felt like my heart could no longer take it, and it would just sort of burst into millions of pieces.
Where human beings are nothing but a collateral damage. We're not talking about numbers, we're not talking about lives destroyed, we're not talking about families destroyed, but we're basically talking about just collateral damage. It's just numbing, because we're not seeing a face, it is distant.
The political process has lost touch with the reality that the fact that war is only about economics.
Es incomprensible que hoy por hoy las potencias mundiales destinen tanto dinero para la muerte.
We've lost our connection to our responsibility for what our governments do. And we get lost in our powerlessness, and we think we can change it in a few moments. That, you know, people marched against the war and it didn't work, and so everybody goes home and starts to do their lives again, while what they were in the streets about originally has become a greater nightmare than they could have ever imagined. But why was it horrible when they first entered the streets and not so horrible now that no one's in the streets?
How do you stop the government is a very difficult question. The only way I think one could do is by overthrowing that government by a revolution. But then, of course, the notion of revolution in our time is so archaic, so dépassé. We don't think on those terms anywhere. But that is the only way we stop a government.
Самый лучший способ, который могут применить женщины всего мира, не отдавать своих детей для того, чтобы из них делали солдат, для того, чтобы из них сделали убийц.
Jer ja dolazim iz jednog regiona gdje smo se mi uzajamno omrzli i počeli jedne druge veoma bestijalno da ubijamo, kao da onaj drugi više nije čovjek.
We have these disasters in which, in a very short period of time, a massive amount of destructive power can be brought to bear. The governments doing this must be replaced. The leaders individually responsible for these actions must be held to justice. We've seen a wonderful trend in the past 20 years with General Pinochet and a number of others whose actions led to genocide, led to disappearances, led to death, being brought before world courts of justice. So we must move to a world in which every leader is held accountable in the same way, with the feeling that their actions will be judged.
As a human being, I feel that what is today's war? We are killing each other, and it's something that taking peace away of lot of people.
From Moise Marabout, 23, Agadez, Niger.
Why is there no peace in the Middle East yet?
שאלה שמאוד מאוד 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 קרובה לליבי בתור ישראלית.
אני יכולה רק להגיד שמהמקום שאני רואה את הדברים, אין שלום במזרח התיכון, בעיקר בגלל התנשאות וגברות הלב.
As long as justice is not addressed, we will not have peace. Peace is not a moment between conflicts, but a continuous state one lives and strives for.
أظن أنها غير مقتنعة بالسلام، والسلام الذي وجد كان سلاما زائفا، وكان سلاما مبنيا على عدم الثقة.
Also ich glaube, der Grund ist, weil es Fanatiker auf beiden Seiten gibt. Auf beiden Seiten.
אסור להתעלם מהעובדה שאנחנו נושאים צלקת נפשית עמוקה מאוד, והבעיה היא שבמקום לקחת על עצמנו תהליך של ריפוי ולהבין שאנחנו חייבים לגייס חמלה ואהבה וסליחה כדי להגיע לדיאלוג בגובה העיניים. אנחנו כל הזמן מתבצרים במה שנקרא צדקתנו. אין דבר כזה צדקתנו. ואנחנו חיים בתחושה שמותר לנו בגלל מה שעשו לנו.
I believe the Palestinian and the Israeli would like to be able to coexist together. The whole argument that we were here first and they were here first is totally irrelevant. We are all visitors on this planet. We are all strangers walking on borrowed land.
Once the Palestinian and the Israeli will live equally with self-respect, with respect to each other and solidarity, it will echo to the entire world. It will stop these stupid battles that the state decide of a culture between West and Muslims. It's such a bullshit thing. In Israel and Palestine we can prove that this is together can be the most beautiful culture one can have. I know I sound like a dreamer.
In my country, in my community, we normally say Panor Wamikono Soranjirorino Parara, which means that where two bulls fight, normally the grass is the one that suffers.
Question 61 from Wolfgang Jost, 23, Berlin, Germany.
Why is an Iranian nuclear bomb supposed to be more dangerous than an American, Israeli, or French?
Let us not ask this question in America or France or Israel, but let us ask this question in Algeria or in Iraq or in Lebanon and in Palestine, well, or even Japan.
August 7, 1945, American dropped a bomb on Hiroshima. Some 100,000 people have been killed, children in school, primary school, civilian. And the killing went on for the years because of the atomic consequences. Who has been using really those bombs practically? Until now, just USA.
Iran pledges, promises to destroy Israel. And there was no doubt that if Iran were to have a nuclear bomb, it will keep its promise.
Israel's bombs, where do they come from? We make those. We sell them to Israel.
the American, Israeli, and French bombs should be eliminated. France and the United States have a legal obligation to do so under the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, and Israel has a security interest in really resolving the conflicts in its region through nonviolent means, because eventually, as long as some have nuclear weapons, others will want them. As long as they want them, at some point they will get them, and as long as they exist, it's inevitable that either through accident or design they will be used. Any use is catastrophic, therefore they must be universally abolished.
Why do we have to have a nuclear bomb?
We shouldn't be. If we were to start all over again, I think no one would say that it was a good idea to build nuclear bombs. Yeah. Insane.
Who would we be if we didn't live in the shadow of the atomic bomb? I think we would be very different people. Would we live in this sense of fear that could be that is manipulated by external powers so easily? Would we still be allowing the level of violence that we allow? I don't think so. I think we could have found some wonderful ways to deal with conflict that wasn't violence. And I do think that who we are in the 21st century has deeply been affected by the technological advances in weaponry, and I don't think we fully understand what that's done to our humanity, what it's done even just to American citizens to have used the atomic bomb. I think that contributes to how kind of violent our own inner natures is. It's contributed to the level of depression, the level of addictions, the disconnect and denial, and yeah, I think it would be a very different world, certainly one more
Thank you. Question 62 is from the writer and activist Arundhati Roy.
Between nonviolent resistance and armed struggle, where do we go? What is effective?
What is the right thing to do? Or do we need a biodiversity
Do we need
resistance?
a biodiversity of resistance?
Arundhati, if you could sit here and hear this murmur and see all these faces.
I like the name biodiversity of resistance.
This is a great question, and I'm not sure that we are the one to answer. Yeah, I would prefer to say that I prefer a non-violence resistance. Yeah, I wish this resistance would make it. But we are not the one who choose the resistance of the oppressed.
We certainly need a variety of forms of resistance. Armed struggle must be the last resort. It must be something that we are very, very mindful of and oftentimes suspicious of, and yet there are conditions under which armed struggle becomes necessary. For the most part, we must deploy all forms of nonviolent resistance and struggle, understanding nonviolence as something active, as something that's vital and vibrant, something that requires our sacrifice, our suffering, something that allows us to accent the best in ourselves and the best in others.
The struggle for change in every single place where struggle has been successful has employed what you term a biodiversity of tactics, from nonviolent resistance to political organizing, to speech making, to armed struggle. Legitimate armed struggle based on the principles laid down by, among others, the African National Congress and Che Guevara, to distinguish between mere terrorism, violence for its own sake with unnecessary casualties, an armed struggle that is undertaken to mobilize and protect a majority, an oppressed majority.
As someone who is an organizer, whatever decision I make and whatever movement I'm engaged with, I always have to ask myself, can I live with the impact of the tactic that I'm going to use?
It never happens that when change is taking place, that it does not affect others. Always there are victims of change.
Ask yourself, how much are you willing to give? How convinced are you of your goal? And then you can choose the weapons. Could be a pen, could be a gun, could be a camera, could be a piece of paper, could be a knife, could be your life.
I think that we can accomplish a lot with non-violent resistance. But are there times when armed struggles are justified? Are revolutions justified?
I think concentrating on resistance, there's something wrong with that. We're not just concentrating on resistance. We'll have to create attractance. We have to create a new paradigm which is attractive to go to.
Everyone is blooming in its own beauty. Imagine that everyone sitting here in the circle at the table, blooming their own beauty. Yes, our own hardy. We need that biodiversity, earth, everyone's language, everyone's culture, everyone's spiritual understanding.
En estos momentos pueden ver ustedes alrededor mío un círculo que representa una comunidad global, donde es evidente la diversidad de pensamientos, la diversidad de ideas, la diversidad de conceptos.
¿Hay alguien ahí escuchándonos? ¿Alguna vez?
Das wird wahrscheinlich noch in die Welt raus katapultiert, wie so ein Diskus. Super. Ja, hört sich gut an, alles schön.
And can you take your head off so that you can really feel what's going on around you? You can really sense what's going on around you. Are you still in your mind thinking that part?
Nuestra amiga la cámara.
Guys, whatever you hear from me, if there is one smart thing, take it, and the rest, please erase it.
I also went to the center. How was the center?
It was really good. It's amazing because you can click on the different, any camera you can go.
From Sarah Francis, 35, Dublin, Ireland.
What does courage mean now?
I think courage is something I appreciate of a person so much. I mean, people, I salute the people who has courage. Courage is something to make you continue to live day-to-day life. Courage is something, it's step by step, you go up.
It takes courage to be a human being. It takes courage to be.
Einsamkeit ist Mut, Hermetik, totale Neutralität, sich, seiner selbst unsicher zu sein, ist Mut.
Courage is so many things. Courage is the courage of Aung San Suu Kyi, who has been kept incommunicado and on house for arrest. Courage is the courage of the young students in Tiananmen Square.
We risk our lives in different ways. Well, I've never really risked mine, so I can't say. I've never lived in truly dangerous situations the way so many people around this table have done.
Well, to put it quite simply, I'm willing to die Yes, I'm willing to die. I have the courage to take the risk to die, to defend who I am and what I'm doing.
Well, I mean, we're sitting in a square where the adventure of Nazism took over this beautiful country of Germany and distorted the laws of justice in a most gross and horrific fashion. Imagine the courage of people that broke the laws of the state to honor the higher law of caring for human life.
你知道中国的劳改相当于苏联的古拉格，相当于德国的集中营，大概4-5千万人都在里面受死掉性命。我自己在里面待了19年，19年以后我到美国来，我也不想谈这些事情，但是最后还是起来了，因为人的生命就这一次。
¿Qué hubiera sido la Argentina sin el coraje de las madres de Plaza de Mayo, que frente a la dictadura del terrorismo de los generales Videla, Macera y Agosti, que hacían desaparecer miles de personas y las arrojaban al mar? ¿Qué hubiera sido de nosotros sin la lección de coraje de esas madres que frente a la Casa de Gobierno todos los jueves desfilaban con los retratos de sus hijos desaparecidos?
Coraje significa comprender de que esos poderes no son invencibles, como están demostrando pueblos en el mundo, que con coraje, con indignación, han logrado expulsar transnacionales de sus países, han logrado voltear, tumbar gobiernos.
That courage has everything to do with looking the future into the face, always acknowledging an element of the unknown, but believing that if one sacrifices, if one suffers, if one takes the risk and allows oneself to be vulnerable, that one can still make a difference.
Il faut garder ça en tête et ça devrait nous rendre d'autant plus radicaux et motivés que nous ne risquons pas notre vie, parfois que des ennuis, un peu d'ostracisme, un peu moins de bien-être.
Courage is also not just about changing this world. It is really also about ensuring that the present-day world does not change me.
Question 78 from Nancy Clemens, 57, Cameron, Missouri, USA.
What can I do and tell others to do to stop global warming? What can I do and tell others to do to stop global warming? Please begin.
This is a big question.
Simplemente las generaciones futuras no comprenderán nuestro actual delirio de destrucción.
There's nothing you and I we can do to stop the global warming. The ice is going to carry melting away. And now the matter is who will live? Who will live with a life worth living? We know that many will perish. We know that many more will barely survive with no life. Few will have a life worthy of living. I pray to the Great One and ask him again and pray again that you and me will be able to have a life worthy of living. Because no matter what you and I do today, there's no way of returning. The ice will carry on melting until it ceases to exist.
Actually, we can't stop global warming anymore. As an evolution biologist, I firmly believe that we cannot stop it anymore. However, we can slow it down.
Global warming is not about science, it's about experience. Science will give us the facts, it will give us the data, and it may move us to act. But ultimately, how we move each other to act is a question more of the heart than it is the head.
Yeah, well, I guess that we're all part of the problem, but we also can be part of the solution. And I mean, for myself, I could make a contribution by stop driving my car.
Transitions to biofuels and even large-scale wind and solar would probably not be able to be sufficient to sustain an industrial system at the present scale. And so the answer is powering down.
Right now, hundreds of communities are starting to take these steps. They are engaged in what is called power down. They are looking at how they, as communities, can take steps right now to localize their economies. They realize that if oil prices shoot up or if there's scarcity, they may find the supermarket shelves empty. They may find that they won't be able to heat their homes, that they won't be able to travel.
We must talk about how to control our cheap desire.
I think something we can all do worldwide is to shame and ridicule the people who are polluting.
Es wird keinen Notstand geben. Wir sind ja seit Jahrtausenden im Ausnahmezustand.
私たちは錯覚を起こす。それは国が、政治が、宗教、人種が、民族が作り上げられていると思うけど、本来はそうではないのです。人類一人一人の意識の問題であるのです。
I don't believe in humankind. No, I don't. I tell you, I'm embarrassed to belong to that race. And at the same time, I'm fascinated by it. La bella e la bestia.
Question 83 is from the photographer Sebastião Salgado of Aimorés, Minas Gerais, Brazil.
Can a person be perceptive enough to see our planet in a way that tells them that they too are part of nature?
We all start seeing clearer and clearer the damage done. We see it at our doorsteps. We see and feel the climate changes, the droughts and the flooding, the storms and the heat. We breathe the bad air. We suffer from allergies. We miss the taste in food. We watch the forests die. The animals and plants endangered and disappearing. And more of us understand that the planet
does not belong to us, but that we belong to the earth.
Since the 20th century, when man was able to escape gravity and move into space, we've had pictures, beautiful pictures of our planet, the little bluish globe that floats into the universe. And as you look at those pictures, you become almost sentimental and think, I live on this planet. I am part of this planet.
Go out in a field and lie down at night and look down into the stars. Pretend that gravity has you glued to the bottom of the planet, because how do you know which way is up?
The reason why little children love animals is because we have co-evolved with the rest of creation. We have lived close to nature for almost all our evolution. This little blip modern life, cut off from the earth, cut off from other animals, and cut off from one another, has only happened because we have also become cut off from ourselves, from our own hearts, from our own bodies.
Nature makes the most sophisticated materials on the planet out of carbohydrates. We too can learn how to do that, but we have thought ourselves to be superior to nature. We haven't looked at her 4.5 billion years of experience in incredible technologies. Take a wasp nest. It's a building that hangs from a single thread, made of materials so light that it can hold 300 times its own weight in inhabitants. Can we learn to make buildings like that? Can we grow skyscrapers from the bottom up, the way a reed grows, by building new cells at the bottom of it and pushing itself upward? We have so much to learn from nature.
אבל אם אנחנו נשתווה עם הטבע גם בדרגת המדבר, בבחירה החופשית שלנו, במאמץ האישי שלנו, אז בזה אנחנו נגיע לאיזון מכל הטבע ונהיה כמו כל הטבע. אנחנו נרגיש אז נצחיות, שלמות, הרמוניה, מה שיש בכל הטבע חוץ מהיהודי שלנו. וכך אנחנו מרגישים לא את הטבע, אנחנו מרגישים את ההפכיות שלנו ממנה.
Everything we eat, everything we wear, all our houses, all our objects come from the living earth. So learning how to live from that earth in a way that is sustainable is not utopian, is not a dream. What stands between us and that possibility is the idea that it can't be done, the idea that they are too powerful, that corporations can't change, that the idea that people don't want change, the idea that all of this comes from innate human greed, that it comes from overpopulation, the planet is too crowded, therefore it's not possible to provide for people. All of these are myths that need to be reassessed, assumptions that need to be rethought.
Question 96 comes from Miraj Khaled, 13, from Dhaka, Bangladesh. What is God's religion? She asks. What is God's religion? Please begin.
I loved that question when I saw it because I think this is very perceptive.
¿Cuál Dios? ¿Cuál religión?
What God? Who's God?
Whichever way we want to take it, we must respect how others see this word God.
que Dios es una manera que uno tiene de crearse ciertos arquetipos, ciertas expectativas, ciertos objetivos.
God is isness.
God is spirit. God is not religion. God doesn't have a religion.
No existe Dios.
I think the religion of my goddess is reflected in every corner of the world, in every leaf, in every speck of dirt, in every flower.
No, I don't believe that God has a religion. I think that religion is a profoundly human phenomena. And when we talk about God having a religion, you can be rest assured that you're talking about some human construction, some human creation.
What we project onto Him.
Eu sou do amor, eu sou do universo, eu sou Deus em ação.
Es gibt keinen Gott. Gott ist ein Symbol für etwas, was wir nicht in Sprache fassen können. Und deshalb gibt es auch keine Religion Gottes. Gott, muss man sich vorstellen, ist etwas, das nicht ein Nichtwissen ist, sondern das überhaupt außerhalb unseres Wissens ist, das nicht die Qualität der Wissbarkeit hat. Es ist etwas so, wie wenn wir die Frage stellen, was ist die Farbe eines Kreises? Ist er rot, grün oder blau? Nein, er ist weder blau noch rot noch grün. Er ist auch nicht farblos. Die Frage nach der Farbe des Kreises ist unsinnig, weil ein Kreis kennt nicht die Farbe. Das sehen viele nicht ein. Sie nehmen einen Stift aus ihrer Tasche, malen einen Kreis auf ein Papier und sagen, sieh mal, dieser Kreis ist doch blau. Ja, der von uns gemalte Kreis ist blau, aber die Farbe, die kommt von meinem Stift und nicht von dem Kreis. Die Farbe des Stiftes ist die Religion, mit der wir das Göttliche ausdrücken, aber den Kreis selbst können wir nicht zeichnen. Es ist etwas, was mit Farbe nichts zu tun hat. Und es gibt so viele Religionen, wie es Farben gibt, mit denen ich einen Kreis male.
I really like that one.
I'm someone that believes in God, but I believe, all I know about God is there is a God and it isn't me. That's all I've been able to figure out so far.
Don't you think God is in you as well?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Most of my whole thing of spirituality is like, I'm a recovering heroin addict.
I haven't met God yet. If I meet one day, then I will ask him the questions.
Thank you too.
Last one. Question. 100.
Last one. Floy man kasi ganon.
Cheers. Okay, last question. Let's do it.
From Keith Dirks, 48, Piedmont, California, USA.
What are the myths that we need to create to change the world for the better?
Creation stories are part of every culture in human history, and they were usually told by some kind of a priesthood. But now science tells the creation story. It's been elevated to that status of priesthood that gets to tell the big story to the culture. What story is it telling us? That we live in a non-living, purposeless universe running down by entropy. Oh, how cheery is that for a creation story? And then we add in that evolution on this planet is about the survival of the fittest, about an endless competition and scarcity, and that you have to get what you can while you can and beat the other guy to it. Now, this is a totally depressing creation story, a universe running down meaninglessly. You're caught in it. You're stuck in an endless struggle and scarcity. This is a terrible story to be telling people, and it does not fit the scientific facts. We know that every force in nature has an opposite. If there's entropy, there has to be syntropy. We know that in evolution, there's a tremendous amount of cooperation. In fact, I'd say there's a great story in the maturation cycle of evolving species, where they first are young and grabby and multiply as fast as they can, take all the territory they can, bump off their competitors, act like capitalists, and then they discover bit by bit the advantages of cooperation. And as they do so, they build bigger and bigger cooperative enterprises and find out that their economies are cheaper, more effective, more efficient, work for everybody, and you get the evolution of rainforests and human bodies made of 100 trillion cells working in complete cooperation, even though they're so very diverse. This is the story we need to tell in the world. A great new story of the human species growing up into global family, doing win-win economics, and making a better world for all.
Human beings are appreciators, not just observers, but appreciators, participants, even co-creators of the cosmic process.
The whole world is deeply entangled. All the living organisms, all the parts of the universe, in fact, the whole universe is living, including the electrons and the protons and everything. They are all organisms. They all have a history, and they're all entangled, so deeply, intimately interconnected that you cannot separate them. And at any moment, this entangled universe is creating and recreating itself anew.
That, I think, is the evolution of the cosmos, evolution of all things in it, from atoms to humans to galaxies. That is the objective, that is the ambition, that is the ultimate aim of divine creativity. That's as far as we can come as human beings to understand it.
Ich glaube, dass ein Maß an gelebter Demut und ein Maß an Mitmenschlichkeit und an Bekenntnis zur Schönheit als Gegenstück zur Brutalität und zur Grausamkeit der Welt. Ich glaube, dass das Sakrale der Natur liegen kann, nicht nur im Übernatürlichen, auch in der Schönheit der Natur. Ich glaube, dass der Mensch ein metaphysisches Tier ist und immer bleiben wird durch seine Endlichkeit. Er ist das einzige Tier, was weiß, dass es sterben muss. Darin liegt das Mysterium, das fortgesetzte Mysterium menschlicher Existenz.
It would have to do with the marrying of the mind, the soul, and this corporeal little covering that is supposed to be the body. That the marriage of all those, if it indeed be that, can only be powered by positivity. And if the positivity then manages to give birth to that marriage, that all the troubles of the earth will be done. If the human mind has got the space in which to breathe, to live, to pulse, to flow,
nobody's gonna ever listen to all of this because we're 112, there's 100 questions. Let's say that's 11,200. Let's say only 2 minutes each time, that's 22,000 minutes. You know what that is? That is 500, that's 300 days.
Okay, it's finished. C'est fini, hein?